Lena Moore believed she had escaped her past. Daniel Price believed love had finally brought her peace, and Aaron Cole believed the story was not over yet. On a day meant to seal happiness forever, these three lives collided in a way no one could have imagined. What began as a perfect wedding celebration slowly transformed into a nightmare rooted in obsession, patience, and calculated revenge. One man arrived unnoticed, carrying not anger, but a plan built over years. By the time the truth revealed itself, joy had already turned to terror, and a single decision from the past proved powerful enough to destroy the present. The wedding day began with a calm that felt almost unreal. Soft sunlight spread evenly across the countryside venue, warming the open fields and the neatly arranged white chairs that faced a small wooden arch decorated with fresh flowers. Guests arrived early, laughing, taking photos, and admiring how peaceful everything looked. The air carried the faint scent of grass and roses, and nothing about the setting suggested that this day would become unforgettable for all the wrong reasons. It was meant to be a fresh start, a moment frozen in happiness. Lena Moore had waited a long time for this day. Her past had not been easy, and the journey to this moment had taken years of healing and rebuilding. Friends often described her as strong, not because life had been kind, but because she had survived things that nearly broke her. Standing at the center of the preparations, she looked relaxed, confident, and free from the shadows that once followed her. This wedding symbolized more than love. It represented escape, safety, and a future she believed was finally under her control. Daniel Price, the groom, was equally hopeful. He was known for his quiet nature and steady presence. To him, this wedding was not just a celebration, but a promise of stability and peace. He had worked carefully to make sure everything was perfect, from the timing of the ceremony to the smallest details of the reception. Every plan had been checked and rechecked to avoid surprises. As the guests settled into their seats and music softly played in the background, the atmosphere felt complete. There were no arguments, no delays, no visible problems. Smiles were genuine, and excitement filled the space. No one noticed the subtle feeling that something was slightly off, a silence beneath the laughter. The past, unseen and uninvited, was already on its way, and the perfect day was standing at the edge of disaster without knowing it. Years before the wedding, Lena's life looked very different. She had once believed she was in love, convinced that intensity meant devotion. The relationship slowly changed, becoming heavy and suffocating. Her ex-boyfriend, Aaron Cole, wanted constant control over where she went, who she spoke to, and how she lived her life. What first appeared as concern turned into obsession, and small restrictions grew into silent rules. By the time Lena realized how trapped she was, fear had already replaced affection. Ending the relationship was not easy. It took careful planning and the support of close friends to create distance. When Lena finally left, she believed the worst was over. Aaron did not chase her openly or cause scenes. Instead, he disappeared without protest. That silence gave Lena hope that he had accepted the end and moved on. She changed cities, rebuilt her routine, and focused on healing. Over time, the memories faded and the fear loosened its grip. What Lena did not know was that Aaron never truly left. From a distance, he watched her life rebuild itself without him. He followed her online presence carefully, noting every change and every milestone. Each photo, each update, confirmed that she was moving forward. To him, this was not growth. It was betrayal. The more stable her life became, the deeper his resentment grew. When Lena announced her engagement, something inside Aaron shifted. The news did not shock him. He had been expecting it. Instead, it gave his obsession a new direction. He began researching wedding venues, dates, and guest lists using fragments of information gathered over years. The wedding became more than an event. It became a symbol of everything he believed was stolen from him. While Lena focused on her future, Aaron quietly turned his fixation into a plan, one that would bring him back into her life in the most destructive way possible. The first sign of trouble arrived without noise or urgency. A dark sedan rolled slowly into the gravel parking area, its engine cutting off as if it belonged there. The timing was perfect, slipping in between groups of late guests who were adjusting clothes and checking directions. Nothing about the arrival drew attention. The driver stepped out calmly, dressed in a suit that matched the tone of the event, blending easily into the scene. From a distance, he looked like someone who had every right to be there. Aaron moved with purpose, but without haste. He studied the layout of the venue as he walked, taking mental notes of entrances, exits, and the flow of people. Years of obsession had prepared him for this moment. Every step he took followed a plan already rehearsed countless times in his mind. In his hands, he carried a neatly wrapped gift box, its silver paper catching the sunlight just enough to appear elegant. It looked no different from the dozens of other presents being carried inside. Guests smiled politely as he passed them. Some nodded in recognition, assuming he was a friend of the family they had simply never met. Others barely noticed him at all, distracted by the music and excitement around them. No one asked his name. No one questioned his presence. The lack of security made his entry effortless, almost unsettling in how easily it happened. Inside the reception area, Aaron paused briefly, scanning the room. He watched staff members move between tables, adjusting decorations and checking schedules. He listened to the rhythm of the event, timing his actions to avoid attention. With steady hands, he placed the gift among the others, choosing a position close to decorative fabrics and floral arrangements. It was a small action with enormous consequences. As he stepped away, his expression remained calm. To everyone around him, he was just another guest settling in for a celebration. No one realized that the moment he crossed into the venue. The gift sat quietly among bright ribbons and carefully stacked boxes, looking harmless and out of place only in how ordinary it appeared. No one paid it any special attention. The reception area continued to fill with energy as final preparations were made. Tables were adjusted, candles were arranged, and decorative fabrics were smoothed out to create a warm and welcoming atmosphere. The gift table, meant to represent generosity and celebration, became the center of something far darker. Inside the silver wrapping, the contents were designed for delay rather than explosion. The chemicals had been prepared to react slowly, releasing heat and smoke before igniting fully. This gave Aaron time to disappear into the crowd, while ensuring the damage would spread before anyone could react. The materials were hidden beneath layers of padding and false packaging, crafted to avoid suspicion even if briefly handled. As minutes passed, a faint smell mixed with the floral scent in the air. It was subtle enough to be dismissed as a faulty candle or overheated equipment. Thin streams of smoke curled upward, barely visible against the light-colored decorations. At first, no one panicked. Confusion delayed action, and those nearby hesitated, unsure if something was actually wrong. Then the smoke thickened. Heat built rapidly beneath the decorative fabrics, and flames suddenly appeared, feeding on ribbons, paper, and dry materials. Fire spread faster than expected, climbing upward and sending dark clouds across the ceiling. The cheerful atmosphere collapsed in seconds. What had been laughter and music turned into movement and alarm as people finally recognized the danger. The placement of the gift made the situation worse. Positioned near the center of the reception area, the fire had multiple paths to grow. Decorations that once symbolized love and care now fueled destruction. By the time anyone attempted to intervene, the fire had already taken control. Panic spread faster than the fire itself. Guests reacted instinctively, some running toward exits while others froze in shock, unsure what to do next. Chairs were knocked over, tables pushed aside, and carefully arranged decorations collapsed under hurried movement. The music stopped abruptly, replaced by alarms and the sharp sound of breaking glass. Thick smoke filled the air, making it hard to see and even harder to breathe. What had been a place of joy turned into a maze of confusion. People began coughing and shielding their faces as visibility dropped. The exits that seemed obvious moments earlier were suddenly hard to find. Smoke clung to the ceiling and rolled downward, creating a sense of suffocation. Some guests tripped over fallen items, slowing those behind them. The lack of clear direction made the situation worse, as everyone tried to escape at the same time. Fear erased order within seconds. Amid the chaos, Aaron moved with disturbing calm. He stayed close to the edges of the crowd, avoiding attention. Using the confusion as cover, he quietly interfered with escape routes. Doors that had been unlocked earlier were secured, and pathways were blocked just enough to delay movement. These actions did not stop people completely, but they increased panic and prolonged exposure to smoke and heat. Emergency alarms echoed throughout the venue, but the response felt delayed to those trapped inside. The fire continued to grow, feeding on decorations and fabric, while smoke alarms screamed overhead. Guests pushed harder toward exits, desperation replacing reason. Outside, some people collapsed on the grass, gasping for air, while others turned back, shouting for loved ones still inside. The chaos was not accidental. Every delay, every moment of confusion served a purpose. While guests fought to escape and staff struggled to regain control, the real damage was already done. The celebration was destroyed, the sense of safety shattered. When the flames were finally controlled and the smoke began to clear, the full scale of what had happened slowly emerged. The fire had not been an accident, and it had not been random. Investigators quickly realized that the placement of the gift, the timing of the ignition, and the blocked exits pointed to deliberate planning. This was not an act of rage carried out in the heat of the moment. It was careful, patient, and intentional. As emergency crews treated the injured and secured the area, attention turned to understanding why someone would do this. Evidence collected from the remains of the gift revealed materials that were not commonly accessible, requiring knowledge and preparation. This discovery shifted the case from negligence to premeditated attack. The venue was sealed off as a crime scene, and the wedding that was meant to mark a new beginning became the center of a criminal investigation. The motive became clearer as detectives examined Lena's past. They uncovered the history of her former relationship, marked by control and obsession. Records showed a pattern of silent monitoring that had gone unnoticed for years. Online activity, location tracking, and saved information painted a disturbing picture of someone who had never accepted loss. The attack was not about harming everyone present. It was about destroying a moment that symbolized freedom and happiness. Surveillance footage revealed something even more unsettling. The suspect had left before the fire reached its peak, calm and composed, blending into the evacuation. There was no attempt to stay and witness the destruction. The goal had already been achieved. The damage was emotional as much as physical. The realization settled heavily over investigators and survivors alike. The fire was not meant to end lives quickly. It was designed to scar memories, to turn joy into fear, and to ensure that one moment would forever overshadow the future. The investigation stretched on far longer than anyone expected. In the days following the fire, the case dominated news coverage and public attention. Images of the damaged venue circulated everywhere, turning a private tragedy into a national discussion about safety and obsession. Tips poured in from across the country, but most led nowhere. The person responsible had planned carefully, leaving behind confusion rather than clear answers. Investigators worked through thousands of hours of surveillance footage from nearby roads, businesses, and traffic cameras. Each clip was reviewed frame by frame, searching for patterns or faces that stood out. Financial records were examined next. A trail of small purchases began to form, spread across different towns, and paid for in ways meant to avoid detection. The pattern suggested someone living cautiously, always preparing for the possibility of being found. Months passed, and frustration grew. Survivors struggled to move forward while knowing the person responsible was still free. The case refused to fade, however, because the motive was personal and the planning unusually detailed. That persistence kept the investigation alive. Analysts began focusing on behavioral patterns rather than direct evidence, narrowing their search to individuals with a history of fixation and isolation. The breakthrough came unexpectedly from a small rural community. A local report described a man living quietly under a different name, avoiding social interaction and working temporary jobs. His routines were rigid, and he showed unusual interest in news reports about the wedding fire. This detail raised suspicion. When authorities compared photographs and records, the resemblance was impossible to ignore. Surveillance confirmed the suspicion. The man had altered his appearance, changed his habits, and cut off all known connections, but he had not erased his past completely. The obsession had followed him. The arrest happened just before sunrise, when the town was still quiet and unaware of what was unfolding. Law enforcement moved quickly and without warning, surrounding the small house where Aaron had been living under a false identity. There was no dramatic escape or resistance. He was taken into custody with the same calm expression he had shown on the day of the wedding. The man who had vanished so carefully was finally exposed. As the case moved to court, the full extent of the planning came into view. Investigators presented detailed evidence showing how the attack had been constructed over time. Notes, digital records, and carefully saved information revealed a long history of fixation. Every step of Lena's life had been observed from a distance. The wedding was not a sudden trigger, but the final piece of a plan that had been forming for years. The trial shocked the public. Experts described the behavior as driven by obsession and a desire for control rather than impulse or anger. The damage caused went beyond the physical injuries and destruction of property. Survivors spoke about lasting fear, anxiety, and the loss of trust that followed. A moment meant to celebrate love had been turned into a permanent source of trauma. The court delivered its sentence with little hesitation. Aaron was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. The decision was meant to ensure he would never again have the chance to harm others. The case became a reference point in discussions about stalking, obsession, and warning signs that are often ignored. Years later, the wedding venue was rebuilt, standing once again as a place of beauty. Yet for those who were there, the memory never faded. The story served as a chilling reminder that unresolved obsession can grow quietly, and when it finally surfaces, it can destroy far more than a single moment in time.